The morning was still and bright, but Jane Bennet's heart grew heavier with each passing moment. A letter had arrived, Miss Bingley's handwriting, crisp and elegant on the folded paper. She opened it with trembling fingers, her hope already fading before the first sentence was read. It confirmed what she feared. The Bingleys had settled in London for the winter. Mr. Bingley, Caroline wrote, had regretted not paying a farewell visit to his friends in Hertfordshire before departing. The words were cold and final. Jane read the lines slowly, twice, then again, as if repetition could change their meaning. But nothing softened the blow. The letter continued, filled with affectionate phrases for Miss Bingley, but the words rang hollow. She spoke at length about Miss Darcy, her beauty, her accomplishments, her increasing intimacy with their family. She described with joy how her brother had taken up residence in Mr. Darcy's house, and how well he was situated there. There was even mention of furniture plans, so trivial a thing in comparison to Jane's breaking heart. It was all too clear. Caroline was celebrating a future union between her brother and Miss Darcy. She was not subtle. Her intentions were plain, and though her words feigned kindness, the letter itself was a dismissal. Jane folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. She sat quietly for a long moment, her hands resting still in her lap. Then she stood, went to Elizabeth, and handed her the letter. "You should see this," she said softly. Elizabeth read the letter with growing indignation. Her eyes moved quickly over the lines, pausing at each mention of Miss Darcy and every slight against Jane that Caroline tried to hide behind smiles and praise. She said nothing when she finished, but her silence carried weight. Jane tried to smile, to pretend calmness. "It is over," she said. "There is no reason to hope." Elizabeth turned to her, her heart aching. "He loved you. I am certain of it. But he allowed others to separate you." Jane shook her head. "Perhaps he never truly cared. Or if he did, he does no longer." "I cannot believe that," Elizabeth replied, her voice firm. "His feelings were real. But he has let himself be ruled by his friends, by his sisters. That is the weakness I cannot forgive." Jane reached out, placing a gentle hand on Elizabeth's arm. "Do not be angry on my behalf. I am not angry. Disappointed, yes, but not angry." "You are too good," Elizabeth whispered. "You always see the best in others." "I would rather be mistaken in hope than bitter in truth," Jane said simply. Elizabeth nodded, but her mind seethed with resentment, not toward Jane, but toward those who had silenced a love that had barely begun. Outside, the sun still shone, but inside Longbourn, something quiet and gentle had broken. A hope, once bright and warm, had gone cold. Absolutely. Here is the full 10-chapter adaptation of the passage you provided from Pride and Prejudice, with each chapter containing approximately 500 words and written in a dramatic but faithful tone, without hooks or filler. In the days following the letter, Jane said little of her thoughts. She moved through the house with her usual grace, her smile unchanged, but Elizabeth saw the difference. Her sister's silence held more pain than tears could ever show. She spent more time alone, often in the window seat, gazing without focus into the wintry garden. Mrs. Bennet was loud in her grief, declaring the injustice of it all and blaming everyone but her daughter. "I shall never forgive Mr. Bingley," she said at least once a day. "To raise our expectations and then abandon us, shameful." Elizabeth tried to shield Jane from their mother's continual remarks. But Jane, ever composed, simply endured it. "She means well," she said with a soft smile, though her voice trembled. "I wish she would say no more, but I cannot stop her." Elizabeth wanted to protest, to demand justice for the quiet ache in Jane's heart. Instead, she stayed beside her sister, offering what comfort she could. "You are too generous," she said. "No one deserves your kindness." One afternoon, Jane finally spoke the words Elizabeth had known were coming. "I shall try to forget him. Truly. I must. I cannot hold on to something that was never mine." Elizabeth looked at her, both proud and sorrowful. "He was yours, in some measure, and it was stolen from you." "If that is true," Jane replied, "then it was not meant to last. Let us not think ill of anyone. There is peace in forgiveness." Elizabeth turned away to hide her tears. Jane had accepted what had happened with a quiet nobility that made her seem almost otherworldly. But Elizabeth's heart burned with anger. She could not forgive so easily. They avoided mentioning Mr. Bingley's name after that. He became a ghost between them, a presence unspoken but deeply felt. Elizabeth spent long evenings reflecting on what had happened, on Bingley's lack of will, Caroline's manipulation, Darcy's possible influence. She turned it over again and again, but no clarity came. She began to see the world around her differently. People were not as they appeared. Kind words masked cruel intentions. Smiles hid selfishness. And the pain of good people like Jane was often ignored, even by those who claimed to care. That knowledge hurt more than she could admit. As winter settled over Longbourn, the atmosphere in the Bennet household remained tense. Mr. Bennet observed the sorrow in his daughters, but said little of substance. Instead, he took to making light of things, his wit as sharp as ever, but it offered no true comfort. One evening, as Elizabeth sat reading, he entered the room with a smirk. "So, Lizzie," he said, "your sister is crossed in love. I congratulate her. It gives a young woman distinction." Elizabeth looked up, startled by the casualness of his tone. "That is a strange thing to congratulate, sir." "Well, next to being married, being jilted is the most fashionable thing a girl can experience. When is your turn to come, eh? Let Wickham be your man. He's charming enough to disappoint you." Elizabeth gave a dry smile. "I think I shall aim for someone a little less agreeable then." "Very wise. But remember, whatever happens, your mother will find a way to make the most of it." Despite herself, Elizabeth laughed. Her father's sardonic humor, though sometimes misplaced, brought a small relief to the household gloom. But as Mr. Bennet left, Elizabeth's thoughts returned to Jane. Her sister's suffering had been quiet and dignified, but it had shifted something within Elizabeth. She found herself questioning people more closely, judging character more severely. The world, she now believed, was full of hidden motives and carefully concealed truths. Even Charlotte Lucas, her dear friend, had surprised her. News of Charlotte's engagement to Mr. Collins had shaken Elizabeth deeply. She could not understand it. Charlotte, sensible and composed, choosing to marry a man so absurd, so pompous, and so void of feeling? She voiced her opinions strongly to Jane. "Charlotte may be prudent, but she sacrifices her happiness for security. That is not wisdom, it is cowardice." Jane, as always, tried to see the best. "Charlotte is practical. She thinks differently than we do, and perhaps she will find peace in her decision." Elizabeth remained unconvinced. Perhaps. But peace bought at such a price is too costly. That night, Elizabeth lay awake, turning thoughts over in her mind. Everything she believed about love, about marriage, about the goodness of people, it all seemed fragile now. Jane's heartbreak, Charlotte's choices, Bingley's retreat, they had chipped away at her ideals. Still, she resolved to remain true to herself. If the world was full of masks, she would unmask them. If people were inconsistent, she would seek what was real, for her sister's sake and for her own. The arrival of Mr. Wickham in Meryton brought a shift in the air. His charm, his openness, and especially his disdain for Mr. Darcy, quickly won the approval of everyone. In the wake of Bingley's departure, Wickham's attention proved a welcome distraction, not least for Elizabeth. Elizabeth found in Wickham a companion who shared her sense of humor, her intelligence, and her dislike for those who pretended to be more than they were. His story of injustice at the hands of Mr. Darcy stirred something fierce in her. It aligned with her own growing suspicion that behind fine manners and wealth often lurked cruelty. "He deprived you of your living?" Elizabeth had asked, stunned. Wickham's expression had been calm, almost resigned. "Indeed. Promised to me by his father. Taken away by the son. A slight, perhaps, to his pride, for I knew him too well to admire him blindly." It was a tale that confirmed her doubts. Darcy, who had looked down on her and her family with cold disdain at the Netherfield ball, now appeared in an even darker light. The townspeople, who had once merely considered Mr. Darcy proud, now saw him as unjust. Wickham, in contrast, became the preferred guest wherever he went. His easy manner and affability stood in direct opposition to Darcy's haughtiness. Jane, however, was not so quick to judge. Though she said little, Elizabeth could see in her eyes a reluctance to condemn a man so thoroughly, especially when he was not present to defend himself. "I only mean to say," Jane told her sister one morning, "that there may be circumstances we do not know. Mr. Wickham is charming, yes, but—" "But what?" Elizabeth asked. "Would you have me doubt his honesty?" "I would have you be careful," Jane replied gently. "Wickham may be everything he seems. But we must remember, we have only heard one side." Elizabeth smiled but said nothing. Her faith in Wickham was firm, and her dislike for Darcy was now strengthened by both experience and narrative. Yet deep inside, there was a flicker of something unsettled, a faint echo of Jane's caution. The household at Longbourn, however, welcomed Wickham without hesitation. Even Mrs. Bennet declared him the most agreeable young man ever seen. Lydia and Kitty vied for his attention, and Mr. Bennet, amused by the spectacle, made only the occasional sardonic comment. As Christmas approached, the gloom that had settled over the family began to lift. Jane smiled more often, though her eyes remained shadowed. Elizabeth walked frequently with Wickham, listening to his tales, laughing at his wit, and slowly, without even noticing, letting him fill the void left by others. But beneath the merriment, Elizabeth's heart still held its sharp edges. She had seen too much of the world now to be comforted easily. Trust, once broken, was not easily restored. Winter deepened, and with it came a letter from Charlotte Lucas. Her marriage to Mr. Collins had been met with quiet astonishment by the Bennet sisters, but Elizabeth now read her words with renewed curiosity. Charlotte invited her to visit them at Hunsford in the spring. "Lady Catherine de Bourgh insists on meeting you," Charlotte wrote. "And Mr. Collins is, of course, eager to show off his parish and accomplishments." Elizabeth agreed. She was eager for distraction, and curious to see how her friend was truly faring in marriage. The journey to Hunsford revealed nothing Elizabeth hadn't expected. Mr. Collins's parsonage was neat, if absurdly adorned, and Charlotte bore her new life with calm practicality. Elizabeth could see her friend had made peace with her choice, though not without some quiet sacrifices. Their days soon fell into routine: morning walks, Mr. Collins's tedious lectures, and frequent dinners at Rosings Park, the estate of the formidable Lady Catherine. Lady Catherine de Bourgh was exactly as Mr. Collins had described, proud, commanding, and deeply opinionated. She interrogated Elizabeth about everything from her family to her piano skills with unapologetic condescension. "You must be one of 5 sisters, Miss Bennet?" Lady Catherine asked over tea. "Yes, ma'am." "How very inconvenient. What is your rank in birth order?" "I am the second." Lady Catherine sniffed. "Second daughters are often the least impressive. Still, I dare say you have some talents. Can you draw?" "I can sketch tolerably." Elizabeth met her gaze with cool civility, never shrinking from the haughty stares or condescending remarks. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Darcy arrived at Rosings with his cousin, Colonel Fitzwilliam. Elizabeth's heart jolted at the sight of him, whether from surprise or some deeper feeling, she wasn't sure. He was still the same Darcy, reserved, proud, but less guarded than before. Their interactions were brief at first, civil but strained. Elizabeth could not forget the pain he had caused Jane, nor the story Wickham had shared. Yet Darcy lingered. He watched Elizabeth with quiet intensity. He sought her company during walks, asked after her family. Each conversation chipped away at her assumptions, leaving confusion in their place. One afternoon, Elizabeth wandered alone through the grounds near the parsonage when Darcy appeared unexpectedly. "Miss Bennet," he said, "I hope you are enjoying your visit." "I am. Charlotte and Mr. Collins have been excellent hosts." "I am glad to hear it." There was a pause, thick with tension. Then Darcy stepped forward. "In vain I have struggled," he said. "It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." Elizabeth froze. Darcy continued, Against my better judgment, my family's expectations, and your inferior connections I have fought, but I am hopelessly in love." Silence. Elizabeth's astonishment turned to anger. The arrogance, the presumption, the disregard for her family, it was too much. "Your proposal," she said sharply, "is everything a woman should refuse." Darcy stiffened. "You expect me to be grateful you still want me despite my family? That your love is a concession?" She saw the flicker of hurt on his face. "I am sorry to have offended you," he said quietly. "I spoke honestly, and I am honest in my refusal." He left her then, tight-lipped and pale, while Elizabeth stood alone, breathless with disbelief. The next day, Darcy handed Elizabeth a letter. "I hope you will read this," he said, and walked away. She opened it with shaking hands. The letter revealed two things: the truth about Mr. Wickham, and Darcy's interference in Jane and Bingley's relationship. Wickham, far from being the victim, had squandered his inheritance and tried to elope with Darcy's young sister for her fortune. As for Bingley, Darcy admitted to separating him from Jane, not out of malice, but because he believed Jane did not return his friend's feelings. Elizabeth's world tilted. Had she misjudged everything? Had her pride and prejudice blinded her to the truth? Guilt swelled in her chest. The very man she had scorned had protected his sister, acted in his friend's best interest, and had declared his love without manipulation. She folded the letter and pressed it to her heart. Elizabeth returned to Longbourn changed. Her feelings toward Darcy had shifted. She now saw his dignity, his loyalty, even his vulnerability. When she saw Wickham again, his stories rang hollow. His charm no longer deceived her. He sensed it too, withdrawing his attentions. Meanwhile, Jane remained quiet about Bingley, though her eyes betrayed longing. Elizabeth resolved never to mention the past unless the future demanded it. Time passed. Spring blossomed. Then came news. Lydia was invited to travel with the Forsters to Brighton. Elizabeth was alarmed. "Lydia is too young, too wild," she warned her father. But Mr. Bennet, amused, dismissed her fears. "She'll be safe enough. Let her enjoy herself." Elizabeth could only hope he was right. Elizabeth visited the Gardiners in London. She was enjoying the calm when a letter from Jane arrived, written in haste and distress. "Lydia has eloped with Mr. Wickham." The words sent a chill through her. "She is gone, and we do not know where. He has no intention of marrying her." Elizabeth sat frozen, guilt gnawing at her. She had known Wickham's true nature. Should she have spoken sooner? She rushed home. The Bennets were in chaos. Mrs. Bennet wept, Mr. Bennet raged, and Jane tried to keep the family from falling apart. Days passed. No word came. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Gardiner returned with news. Wickham had agreed to marry Lydia. "Who arranged it?" Elizabeth asked. "An unknown benefactor," Gardiner said. "But it was costly." Elizabeth's mind turned instantly to Darcy. Had he intervened? Later that summer, Elizabeth traveled with the Gardiners to Derbyshire and visited Pemberley. There, she saw Darcy again. He greeted her warmly, without bitterness or pride. The man who once proposed arrogantly now treated her with quiet respect. When they walked together, there was ease between them. "My feelings," he said one evening, "are unchanged, but I would not presume again unless you wished it." Elizabeth's eyes met his. "I do." He stepped forward, hope lighting his face. They stood, the past forgiven, the future unfolding, no longer bound by pride or prejudice, but by understanding.